I eat chicken. I grew up in a family where food waste was a taboo, like I think I already said. When we eat chicken, particularly if it's a chicken where you cut it up and drill the pieces, then you have all that bone matter left over. You have the back, and you have the neck, and you have the liver, and the gizzards, and the heart, and all the other internal organs, right? Do you just throw it away? I don't. I put it in the freezer, in a baggie. And then the next chicken I have, I put the parts, those parts that a lot of people would just toss away, in the freezer in a baggie. And then once my freezer is so full that I can't find anything, I dump all those bags of bones in a pot and put water and an onion and some spice and boil it up and let it simmer for 12 or more hours. And in the end, the rich minerals from the bones have dissolved into the water, so you have a very nutritious soup base to consume. But then still, there's still all that other stuff left, all the meat that was left attached to the bones, and the bones themselves. You just throw them away. Some people might. It's better than not having done that whole process to begin with. But I don't even do that. I strain the soup pot and have the broth in one pot and have the bones and whatever debris was left in another pot. And I get one of those things called an immersion blender. And I blenderize the bones and all and use it to feed my pets. my pets that are designed to eat meat, like dogs or cats. No waste, zero waste. Respect the life of that animal that you ate by using every part of it. Right, that's just one example. Feed the animals. You can feed your cats and dogs, stuff like that. If you have chickens or goats, they can eat whatever waste, like vegetable waste that you have. Because, well, chickens are omnivores, they eat insects too, but I won't feed a chicken a chicken. That's not good. Right? And then still, there's other waste too. A lot of fat is left over and can be rendered by factories into energy. Instead of wasting it, use it for energy, like biodiesel. And some of the non-fat waste can be put in your compost pile. And a properly treated compost pile won't release a lot of greenhouse gases, and it will result in organic matter that you can then add to the ground to enrich the soil. And if you're worried about greenhouse gas and you have the means, you can, instead of composting that organic matter, you can turn it into something called, biochar, which is essentially a type of charcoal that helps retain water and retain nutrients in the soil to minimize greenhouse gas as well. And then whatever is left over ends up in the landfill. So you want to minimize the amount that ends up in the landfill by following all these practices. And it results in saving food, reducing the load, reducing food security, and helping the environment as well. Big agriculture relies upon monocrops. They favor monocrops. All the big countries, you go to the Midwest, all the big companies, you go to the Midwest, and it's field after field after field, mile after mile after mile of corn. You go to the South, you might see a lot of soybeans, right? But it's all one crop, one plant, one genus, one species, one strain, one exact type. It's a clone. Every plant is identical to every other plant. Clonal crops like that are a big threat to food security because they're all identical. They're all equally susceptible to the same forces that could render them dead. Couple of examples. The Great Potato Famine in the mid-19th century. The Irish people, their monocrop that fed them, they ate enormous amounts of potato. That was their primary food staple, potatoes. The crop was decimated because of an infection with the fungus Phytophthora infestans, some fungal blight that killed off the entire crop. Without the food, people either died or emigrated away from Ireland to other countries, like the United States, like Canada, like Australia. So their population just, pretty much was decimated because of a monocrop that was all susceptible to the same disease. And it doesn't have to be a disease that decimates a crop. It could be environmental factors like drought. Last year's drought in the United States, 2012 drought, decimated our corn and soy crops in July, which was the hottest July on record ever. And it was hottest in July in 60% of the country. As you can see on the red part is where it was super hot. Destroyed the food. Okay, we didn't all die or emigrate, but still, it could happen on a larger scale, and who knows what could happen. So, the antithesis, the solution, the opposite of monocropping, is diversity, biodiversity. Planting more different types of crops, smaller amounts of more different types of crops. This is the buffer that we need for a resilient planet so that if some type of environmental or biological threat happens, it doesn't decimate the whole food system. So biodiversity safeguards food security. Now I don't know about the accuracy of this, but I got it from a publication, a 1983 publication by some organization called the Rural Advancement Foundation, where they suggest that when they look at 66 different food crops, zucchini or lettuce or carrots or whatever, 93% of the different varieties in 1983. Well, okay, when you compare, so this is a comparison of 1903 versus 1983. 80-year difference. This represents 285 different varieties of cucumbers, compared to 16 left 80 years later. 408 varieties of tomatoes compared to 79 left. So the biodiversity of our food crops is declining, according to this report that was published in 1983 and republished by National Geographic in 2011. Okay. So that's a scary statistic, because you go to the grocery store and you don't have 341 different varieties of zucchini on the shelf. Right? You have like two types, green and yellow. You don't have, your favorite heirloom tromboncini from Italy. You have whatever that green variety of squash is. And so large-scale agriculture, monocropping, is killing our biodiversity. And here's the Royal Society in England, their Botanical Gardens Kew. They have a seed bank, and they estimate that 100,000 plant species are threatened with extinction. Now, that doesn't just include food crops. It includes all different types of plants, but it does include food crops. And the problem is even being perpetuated by government, though. Because I just heard recently that in the European Union, okay, not just Great Britain, but all the European countries that belong to the European Union, there are so-called hobby farmers who save seed and sell them. Or not hobby, but not professional, but amateur farmers. It's called amateur farming. And they sell them. But now, in the European Union, they're saying that no matter whether you're a big company or a small company, unless you get permission to sell your seeds, and you can't sell them. And the only way to get permission to sell your seeds is to pay to get them on the EU list of seeds that are permissible for sale. And a lot of these small